The distant star system of Litheria glimmered like scattered jewels across the dark canvas of space, its planets small and cold, yet alive with secrets. On the outermost colony, a place once built by humans with hope and determination, a shadow had fallen. The Zevri, a proud and controlling alien syndicate, had claimed the colony as their own. Among the humans, some worked under supervision, some fled in quiet fear, and some had been taken entirely from their freedom. Lyra was one of them. She was held in a high-tech containment pod, a structure that gleamed with alien metal and strange lights. The Zevri did not value her mind or her creativity. They saw only her helplessness. To them, she was a trophy, a display of dominance. Lyra spent her days in quiet observation, her sharp mind noting everything: the patterns of the guards, the routines of the Zevri officers, the slight weaknesses in their security systems. She was shackled in more than one way, yet her mind refused to bend. Outside her pod, life in the colony carried on under alien rule. Humans moved quietly, keeping their heads down, afraid of drawing attention. But among them was Jaren, a young engineer with a mind as sharp as Lyra's and a courage that burned brighter than most. He had seen what the Zevri were capable of, and felt a silent anger. They treated humans as toys, but Jaren was determined that would not last. Every day he watched the facility from hidden vantage points. He noted the flow of alien patrols, the moments when the lights dimmed for maintenance, and the weak points in the energy grids. He was patient, careful. One mistake could end everything. But the more he studied, the more he believed he could reach Lyra. Not just to rescue her, but to remind the Zevri that humans were not weak, that humans could fight oppression with intelligence and bravery. Inside the pod, Lyra did not simply wait. Her mind moved constantly, planning, observing, learning. She noticed the way one of the containment locks hummed slightly before engaging, how the energy field flickered at intervals, how the Zevri's command systems were vulnerable when they shifted focus to colony operations. She began leaving small clues for anyone who might notice: tiny scratches on panels, subtle misalignments in the pod's display lights, signs that something could be manipulated. Even as fears settled into the corners of her mind, she refused to give in. She knew that being helpless in body did not mean being helpless in spirit. Humans had survived in harsher worlds than this, had solved problems that no one else could, had survived when every odds was against them. And Lyra intended to prove that. Meanwhile, Jaren worked tirelessly in his workshop, hidden in the shadows of the colony's maintenance sector. He assembled small devices to interfere with the Zevri's surveillance systems. Tiny drones, clever little machines, could slip past sensors and cameras, map the facility and feed him information. He studied alien technology the way humans studied stars, patiently, with curiosity and a hunger to understand. For him, knowledge was power, and preparation was everything. At night, when the alien officers rested, Jaren crept through ventilation shafts and maintenance corridors. He observed the pod from a distance, noting the timings, the rotations of guards, and the moments when the containment field fluctuated. Lyra noticed him as well through the faint shadows cast on her pod's walls. She could not communicate openly, but her subtle gestures, a tilt of the head, a hand pressed briefly against a control panel, became signals. They were two humans, separated physically yet working silently together. Tension grew with each passing day. The Zevri, proud and overconfident, began to notice anomalies, minor malfunctions, systems that acted differently than expected, lights that flickered unexpectedly. They could not understand why humans seemed to manipulate technology with such precision. To the Zevri, humans were fragile, predictable, and limited. That belief was their weakness. In the quiet of her pod, Lyra reflected on her past. She remembered Earth's blue oceans, green forests, and skies that stretched endlessly. She remembered family, friends, and the sense of belonging that seemed so distant now. But she also remembered the things humans could do: solve impossible problems, survive impossible odds, and rise when all seemed lost. She focused on that memory, letting it strengthen her resolve. She was not a toy. She was not broken. She was a human. Jaren, outside, moved carefully. He had studied every patrol pattern, every response routine, and every emergency protocol. He was ready, in his mind, to act when the moment came. But he waited. Patience was essential. A single misstep could doom everything. Yet the longer he waited, the more he admired Lyra's resilience. She had been captive, yet she had not lost her mind, her spirit, or her hope. The Zevri officers occasionally visited the pod, checking their prize. They spoke in a language that sounded harsh and sharp to human ears. Lyra listened carefully, learning what she could from their words and tone. Even when they intended to intimidate, she found pieces of information that could help her escape. Every moment of oppression became a piece of strategy. One evening, as the artificial lights of the colony dimmed for the alien maintenance cycle, Jaren approached the outer perimeter of the containment sector. He crouched behind a series of pipes, watching the patrolling drones and alien guards. His heart beat steadily, not with fear, but with determination. He whispered to himself. Soon, very soon. Inside her pod, Lyra noticed the subtle movement of a shadow outside. Her pulse quickened. She adjusted her position slightly, moving in a way that would not trigger the pod's sensors, but would allow her to interact when the moment came. She had waited for this moment for weeks, preparing mentally, calculating risks, and learning the patterns of the Zevri. The night passed slowly, the colony quiet except for the hum of alien machines. Each human in hiding felt the weight of expectation and hope. Every minor success, a drone temporarily misdirected, a sensor tricked, became a step toward freedom. And the Zevri, oblivious to the growing storm, continued their routines with arrogance and pride. By dawn, Lyra and Jaren were ready. Their minds, aligned though separated by walls and alien technology, had reached a point of synchronization. Lyra had prepared her escape from within, while Jaren had readied the tools to disable surveillance and security systems. They were not acting out of revenge or anger, but from the simple, unyielding determination to reclaim their freedom. As the first artificial light of the colony flickered on, signaling the beginning of the Zevri's daily operations, Lyra moved carefully, manipulating the pod's interface with precision. Jaren, crouched just beyond the security field, held his breath and waited for the exact moment. A tiny misalignment in the energy grid caused a momentary lull in the containment field, a crack, invisible to alien eyes but obvious to humans who understood the systems. Time seemed to slow. Lyra's hand hovered over a control panel, her mind calculating outcomes, probabilities, and risks. Jaren adjusted the position of a drone, feeding real-time data to the pod's interface through a makeshift relay. It was a dance, a silent collaboration, a demonstration of human ingenuity and patience. And then, as the Zevri continued their inspection elsewhere, a single thought united the two humans. Freedom was within reach. The next step would be critical. One wrong move, and their plans would unravel. But for now, the first spark of defiance had been lit. A spark that promised hope, that promised change, that promised the reminder that humans were not weak, and that even in the darkest places the human spirit could shine brighter than any alien technology. In the distance, beyond the walls of the containment facility, the colony slept unaware, but within the shadows, two humans prepared to challenge the expectation of weakness. One was shackled but brilliant. The other was free but determined. Together they would show that humanity could never truly be contained. The stage was set. The moment of reckoning was approaching. And in that quiet tension, the Zevri, proud and confident, remained blissfully unaware that the humans they thought so fragile were quietly preparing to rewrite the rules entirely. The colony was quiet, but the stillness was deceptive. Beneath the calm hum of the Zevri's machinery, a subtle shift was occurring. Jaren moved carefully through the maintenance corridors, his every step calculated. The walls, metallic and cold, reflected the faint light of the alien energy lines, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts. He clutched a small device in his hand, a clever creation of human engineering designed to temporarily disable the Zevri's surveillance drones without alerting the aliens. Jaren's mind raced with possibilities. He knew that every second counted, that one small mistake could collapse the fragile advantage they had painstakingly built. But he also knew humans had a strength that the Zevri could never fully understand: patience, creativity, and courage. These were qualities that could not be measured in the alien system's data, and they were exactly what he would need to reach Lyra. Inside her containment pod, Lyra was already awake. She had spent the night reviewing the patterns Jaren had helped create through their subtle, unseen communication. She had learned to anticipate the drone's movements and the Zevri officers' routines. Every detail mattered: the flicker of a light, the timing of a hum in the ventilation system, even the slightest vibration in the floor. To Lyra, these were not signs of fear or oppression. They were pieces of a puzzle, pieces she would use to turn her captivity into an opportunity. The first challenge was the containment field itself. It hummed with a steady rhythm, its light casting thin lines across the pod's walls. Lyra had studied the pattern for days, noting the slight fluctuation in its energy cycle. She pressed her hand lightly against the control panel, feeling for the moments when the field weakened. Her fingers danced over the interface, inputting commands she had memorized from watching the Zevri work. Each input was precise, careful. One mistake could alert the aliens. Meanwhile, Jaren had reached the outer perimeter of the containment sector. He crouched low, blending into the shadows, adjusting the tiny drone he carried. The device would slip past the sensors and cameras, mapping the facility and feeding live data directly to Lyra's pod. It was a delicate operation, requiring precision and timing. He exhaled slowly, steadying his nerves. Humans were fragile physically, perhaps, but mentally they were unbreakable when focus and intelligence were applied. The Zevri, confident in their control, moved through the colony as if everything belonged to them. Their pride was a shield, blinding them to the subtle ways humans could manipulate their systems. One officer paused near a corridor junction, scanning the area with sharp mechanical eyes. Jaren froze, holding his breath. The officer's gaze lingered for a moment before moving on, and Jaren allowed himself a quiet nod of relief. Small victories, he reminded himself, were still victories. Inside the pod, Lyra felt the first shift in the containment field. A faint flicker, almost imperceptible, signaled the right moment. She activated the relay Jaren had built, and the small drone buzzed softly as it entered the pod's range. Its cameras transmitted images of the surrounding corridors, the patrol patterns, and the positions of the Zevri officers. Lyra studied the feed carefully, memorizing every detail. Freedom required knowledge, and knowledge was power. For the first time since her captivity, Lyra felt a spark of hope that was more than just imagination. She could feel the presence of another human outside, someone working tirelessly to reach her. It was Jaren's ingenuity and courage that gave her strength. The idea that she was not alone, that someone believed in her, filled her with a renewed determination. Jaren moved forward slowly, using the shadows as cover. The corridors were narrow, lined with alien devices that pulsed softly with energy. He avoided the main walkways, taking risks only where he had calculated the outcomes. His mind worked like a well-oiled machine, predicting the Zevri's responses and adjusting his path accordingly. He was not acting out of recklessness, but out of careful planning, a testament to human strategy and ingenuity. As the drone transmitted live images to Lyra's pod, she began to prepare her own movements. She adjusted her restraints slightly, working with tools she had hidden cleverly within her clothing. Her fingers moved with precision, loosening the bindings just enough to allow flexibility without triggering any alarms. She remembered the words of her mentor back on Earth. Even in chains, your mind is free. Your strength is not measured by your body, but by your will. Those words resonated deeply, giving her courage in the quiet darkness. The first minor obstacle arose when a Zevri patrol drone changed its route unexpectedly. Jaren had to think fast. He activated a small projection device, creating a holographic duplicate of himself that walked down an adjacent corridor. The drone, deceived by the illusion, followed the projection while Jaren slipped past unnoticed. It was not brute force that won this moment, but creativity and human cleverness, qualities that the Zevri had consistently underestimated. Lyra, watching the feed, allowed herself a small smile. She had never felt more alive. The combination of patience, intelligence, and courage was working. Step by step, they were reclaiming control from the aliens, not through aggression, but through understanding and strategy. Every minor adjustment, every carefully timed action, brought her closer to freedom. Jaren continued to navigate the labyrinthine corridors, avoiding patrols and surveillance. He had mapped multiple routes, contingencies for unexpected obstacles, and backup plans for every scenario he could anticipate. His mind was a constant calculation of probabilities, a dance of logic and creativity. The Zevri had underestimated humans' ability to think several steps ahead, to adapt quickly and effectively. Meanwhile, Lyra prepared the final sequence that would allow her to leave the pod. She synchronized her movements with Jaren's drone, timing every action to avoid detection. Her heart beat steadily, controlled by focus rather than fear. She recalled the history of humans overcoming impossible odds, explorers navigating deadly planets, scientists solving problems that seemed unsolvable, ordinary people standing up against overwhelming power. That history was alive in her now, guiding her hands, steadying her nerves, and sharpening her mind. The first test of their plan came when a Zevri officer unexpectedly entered the sector. Lyra held her breath, barely moving, as the officer's gaze swept across the pod. Jaren, seeing the threat through the drone feed, activated a small diversion, a light flicker in another corridor, drawing the officer away. Lyra exhaled slowly, her movements resuming as planned. It was a minor victory, but in the delicate game of freedom, minor victories mattered immensely. Step by step, Lyra adjusted the pod's interface, loosening the containment field just enough to create a small exit path. Jaren, using the drone's feed, guided her through the process. Their collaboration was seamless, a demonstration of human coordination and ingenuity under pressure. The Zevri, focused elsewhere, remained oblivious to the subtle but significant changes occurring right under their noses. Time seemed to stretch as Lyra and Jaren continued their delicate work. Every movement, every adjustment, required perfect timing. The air was thick with tension, yet filled with the unspoken confidence that humans could overcome challenges not by force, but by intelligence, patience, and courage. Lyra's mind raced with calculations while Jaren's movements remained precise and controlled. Together, they created a synergy that the Zevri could not anticipate or counter. Finally, the moment arrived. Lyra's restraints were loosened. The containment field temporarily disrupted, and a clear path opened to the corridor outside. She took a deep breath, steadying herself for the next phase. Freedom was within reach, but it required courage, trust, and precise coordination. She looked at the drone feed one last time, seeing Jaren's careful guidance, and knew that together they could succeed. As she began to move, carefully stepping into the corridor, the Zevri remained unaware. Their pride and arrogance had blinded them to the resourcefulness and resilience of humans. Lyra felt a surge of determination. She was no longer a passive captive. She was an active participant in her own liberation. Every careful step was a testament to human courage, intelligence, and the unyielding desire for freedom. Jaren followed closely, guiding her movements through subtle signals and adjustments. The corridor was still dangerous, filled with surveillance devices and occasional patrols, but they moved like shadows, precise and quiet. Every obstacle was met with creative solutions rather than confrontation. Every challenge an opportunity to demonstrate human ingenuity. By the time the first rays of the colony's artificial morning light reached the sector, Lyra and Jaren had navigated most of the facility. They paused briefly in a hidden alcove, taking stock of their progress. They were tired, but their spirits were high. The first major phase of their plan had succeeded, and the spark of human resilience had ignited. Lyra looked at Jaren, gratitude and admiration in her eyes. He nodded, acknowledging their shared effort. Neither spoke much. Words were unnecessary. Their coordinated actions, intelligence, and courage had already spoken louder than any words could. The Zevri, still blind to the depth of human strategy, continued their routines with overconfidence, unaware that the foundation of their control was quietly being dismantled. As they prepared to continue toward the final exit, both Lyra and Jaren knew the next steps would be even more challenging. But they also knew that humans had an extraordinary ability to adapt, to think creatively, and to persevere. They had proven that already, and the knowledge strengthened them for what lay ahead. Step by careful step, using intelligence, patience, and unwavering determination, they moved toward the promise of freedom. And with every move, the Zevri's illusions of control crumbled, revealing the simple truth: humans could never truly be contained. The corridors of the Zevri containment facility stretched endlessly, a labyrinth of polished metal walls and softly humming energy lines. For most, it would have seemed impossible to navigate undetected. But Lyra and Jaren had already proven that humans thrived where strategy and intelligence mattered more than brute strength. Step by careful step, they moved forward, their shadows stretching long and thin under the dim alien lights. Lyra's heart raced, but not with fear. It was a rhythm of focus, alertness, and determination. Every detail mattered. The drones patrolling the area moved in predictable patterns. The officers conducted their rounds with overconfident precision, and the sensors hummed with predictable pulses. She had memorized them all. Every flicker, every subtle shift in light or sound was an opportunity. Humans had survived worlds far harsher than this, with minds sharper than any alien technology, and she carried that legacy with her now. Jaren led, his eyes scanning ahead, his hand occasionally touching the wall for balance. His tiny drone hovered silently near the ceiling, feeding him real-time images of approaching patrols and surveillance. Lyra followed closely, adjusting her movements based on the drone's signals. Every step was a coordinated dance between human intelligence and creativity. The first challenge arose at a junction where multiple patrols converged. The main corridor split into 3 branches, each lined with surveillance cameras that rotated slowly like watchful eyes. A misstep here could expose them entirely. Lyra and Jaren paused, analyzing the situation. They did not panic. Humans rarely did when they relied on preparation, observation, and ingenuity. Jaren activated a small device he had carried since the start. It created a soft projection of light, a moving shadow that mimicked human presence in the far corridor. One of the patrols, detecting the decoy, altered its route to investigate. Another drone was redirected by a minor interference in the energy grid, creating a blind spot. Lyra moved with careful precision, her steps perfectly timed to avoid detection. It was not a race. It was a demonstration of intelligence, patience, and human coordination. Inside the next corridor, Lyra noticed a small panel on the wall that controlled the security lights. With a few deft movements, she altered its programming, causing the lights to flicker briefly and creating a shadowed path for them to move unseen. Jaren adjusted his drone to guide her through the temporary darkness. Each action, small but deliberate, was a victory against the Zevri's assumption that humans were predictable or weak. They paused in a small alcove near the end of the corridor. Lyra caught her breath, her eyes scanning the room ahead. Beyond this point lay the central control hub of the facility, where the Zevri monitored all systems. If they reached it, they could gain complete control over the security networks, but the hub was heavily monitored and designed to be impossible for humans to infiltrate. Yet Jaren's mind thrived on impossible challenges. He traced a path through the hub's security layout using the drone's feed, identifying the exact moments when the sensors would cycle and when the officers would shift positions. Lyra's pulse remained steady as she followed his instructions. They moved like shadows through the corridors, silent, patient, and deliberate. Even when the hum of nearby machinery changed, or a distant patrol's footsteps echoed unexpectedly, they adjusted with calm precision. Humans had an unparalleled ability to adapt to changing conditions, and they were proving it with every step. As they approached the central hub, the challenge intensified. The corridor widened, and the lighting became brighter, revealing the polished floor and metallic walls in sharp clarity. The Zevri officers in this area were alert, moving with mechanical precision and scanning the surroundings carefully. But humans had patience, observation, and creativity, qualities no alien system could fully anticipate. Jaren whispered instructions through the tiny relay they had created. Lyra adjusted the drone's angle and used a reflective surface to create a subtle diversion, drawing the officer's attention momentarily away. She moved silently, each footstep timed with the drone's signals. It was a risky maneuver, but their preparation had minimized the risk. Humans, after all, thrived in moments where others underestimated them. Once inside the hub, Lyra's mind shifted into rapid calculations. The security controls were complex, but not impossible. She identified the primary systems, the secondary backups, and the minor redundancies. With Jaren guiding her, she manipulated the interfaces, subtly altering the security feeds, creating loops in the patrol logs, and redirecting drone patterns. The Zevri monitors would show normal activity while, in reality, humans were taking control. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself a small smile. They were turning the tables. The Zevri, confident in their superiority, had not anticipated the depth of human intelligence and ingenuity. The hub was now subtly under their influence, though the aliens were unaware. It was not a violent victory, but a demonstration of strategy, patience, and skill. Humans were proving their worth not through aggression, but through mastery of their environment. Outside the hub, the corridors were shifting subtly. Patrols moved along altered paths, drones hovered where they were not expected, and lights flickered to create shadows. Jaren and Lyra moved in harmony, their actions synchronized perfectly. Every step reinforced a simple truth. Humans were never helpless when they combined intelligence, creativity, and courage. A sudden alert sounded in the distance. A minor glitch in the Zevri systems triggered a warning. The officers glanced around, trying to identify the cause. Lyra and Jaren did not panic. Instead, they used the distraction to advance further, exploiting the momentary confusion. It was a delicate balance, a dance of timing and precision. Humans had survived impossible odds, and they were doing it again. They reached a ventilation shaft that led toward the outer sections of the facility. It was narrow, uncomfortable, and required careful maneuvering, but it offered a path away from direct surveillance. Lyra slid inside first, with Jaren following. The shaft was dark and silent, a momentary refuge from the Zevri's control. As they crawled through the narrow passage, they communicated silently through hand signals and subtle gestures, their teamwork seamless and efficient. The shaft led them to a maintenance exit near the colony's outer perimeter. The open space beyond was filled with soft alien light, reflecting off polished metal surfaces. It was still dangerous, but the environment now offered opportunities rather than obstacles. Jaren and Lyra paused briefly, taking stock of the layout and planning their next moves. Humans thrived when they could adapt, and every moment of observation strengthened their position. Lyra's mind raced with possibilities. Beyond the perimeter lay freedom, but also the need to maintain control of the facility to ensure that other humans in the colony could move safely. She began to plan subtle interventions, minor manipulations of security protocols that would give their fellow humans an advantage without alerting the Zevri. Jaren watched her work, silently admiring her intellect and courage. They were partners not just in escape, but in strategy, proving that human collaboration was a force even the most advanced alien systems could not fully predict. The first signs of the Zevri noticing the changes appeared as subtle shifts in their routines. Officers glanced at monitors more frequently. Drones hovered in slightly different positions, and the patterns they had relied on for control were disrupted. Yet, even with increased vigilance, the humans continued to move with careful precision. Every alteration they made was calculated, every step deliberate. They were showing that humans were not simply reacting to their environment, but actively shaping it. As they prepared to move toward the final exit point, a complex sequence of sensors and barriers blocked the way. Jaren examined the layout through the drone feed, calculating the exact timing and sequence required to bypass the system. Lyra adjusted the controls with deft hands, aligning her movements with the drone's guidance. It was a delicate operation, but humans had always excelled at solving problems others deemed impossible. Patience, observation, and ingenuity were their tools, and they wielded them with precision. The barriers shifted just as the patrols were momentarily distracted by the minor glitches in the system. Lyra moved forward, her body tense but controlled, every step a testament to human resilience. Jaren followed, guiding her through the subtle variations in timing that ensured their path remained hidden. The Zevri officers could not comprehend the depth of human calculation, the focus, or the patience that had brought them this far. At last, they reached the outer perimeter. The open space of the colony's outskirts stretched before them, illuminated by the faint glow of the Zevri facility. Freedom was close, yet the mission was not complete. They still had to ensure that other humans could move safely, and that the Zevri would not immediately regain control. Lyra and Jaren paused briefly, surveying the area, planning the next steps. In that quiet moment, Lyra allowed herself to reflect. She had been captive, reduced to a pawn in the eyes of the Zevri, yet she had not surrendered. Her mind remained sharp, her will unbroken. With Jaren's guidance, her ingenuity, and the human qualities that could not be measured or predicted, she had navigated impossible challenges. Humans were resilient, clever, and capable of rising above oppression in ways no alien system could fully anticipate. Jaren looked at her, admiration evident in his eyes. "Almost there," he whispered. Not a command, not a boast, but a statement of fact. Humans had reached this point not by force, but by intelligence, patience, and courage. They had turned the tide without harming a single being, demonstrating the power of human strategy and resolve. They prepared for the final stretch, moving toward the edge of the facility where freedom awaited. Every step forward reinforced the simple truth that humans, even in the most controlled and seemingly hopeless situations, could rise through creativity, courage, and cooperation. The Zevri, blinded by arrogance and pride, had underestimated them entirely. As they approached the final exit, the first rays of the artificial sun reflected off the colony's distant walls. Lyra and Jaren paused briefly, knowing that the culmination of their efforts was near. Every observation, every calculation, every patient move had led to this moment. Humans had proven once again that intelligence, resilience, and ingenuity could overcome even the most formidable obstacles. And as they stepped closer to the edge, ready to leave the corridors that had confined them for so long, the story of human perseverance and strategy was clear. They had not relied on aggression or violence. They had relied on the qualities that truly defined humanity: courage, intelligence, patience, and the unyielding refusal to be dominated. The outer perimeter of the Zevri facility stretched wide under the dim, soft light of the alien colony. Lyra paused for a moment, her chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. Freedom was close, yet the challenge was not yet complete. Beyond these walls lay open space, the beginning of the human-controlled sections of the colony. Every step, now, had to be precise. One small miscalculation could allow the Zevri to regain control. Jaren moved beside her, his eyes scanning for patrols, his hand lightly guiding the drone that hovered near the ceiling. Its cameras transmitted images in real time, feeding them both a constant flow of information. The Zevri still patrolled with their usual pride and arrogance, confident that the humans were trapped and powerless. They did not understand patience, observation, or strategy, human traits that were about to shift the balance completely. Lyra stepped carefully onto the maintenance pathway that led beyond the containment sector. The lights flickered faintly, a result of the minor adjustments she had made earlier in the hub. She smiled subtly, knowing that the Zevri would see only routine functioning, while every system had been subtly manipulated. The humans were no longer reacting to the alien control. They were actively shaping it. The corridor opened to a larger area, the central courtyard of the facility. Here, humans who were previously trapped in minor holding areas were hidden, watching from shadows as Jaren and Lyra moved through the open space. The Zevri drones patrolled in slow circles, scanning the area, but humans were clever, using hidden devices to interfere with the sensors, creating subtle blind spots and temporary lapses in observation. Every human in the courtyard had already begun to take note, ready to move when the moment was right. Lyra turned to Jaren and whispered, "We need to guide them safely without alerting the Zevri." She had already calculated the safest path, using the drones and the minor distractions she had prepared. Humans had survived impossible worlds through collaboration, careful observation, and strategic thinking. This was no different. Jaren nodded, adjusting the drone to signal the correct pathway. Together, they guided the humans in the courtyard toward the maintenance tunnels, avoiding direct lines of sight from the drones. Each step was coordinated, precise, and deliberate. The Zevri officers were increasingly confused by the unusual activity patterns, yet their pride prevented them from realizing that the humans were the orchestrators, not the instruments of chaos. The first group of humans reached the tunnels safely. Lyra and Jaren remained in the courtyard, their movements drawing attention without revealing the full plan. It was a calculated risk. The humans had learned to trust their guidance, and the small diversions kept the Zevri occupied, while the rest of the colony moved toward freedom. Humans were demonstrating not aggression, but ingenuity and leadership, qualities that the aliens could not easily predict or counter. From the shadows, a Zevri officer noticed something unusual, a faint misalignment in a drone's path. But by the time they attempted to correct it, another adjustment had already shifted the system. The humans had created multiple layers of control, subtle manipulations that kept the Zevri distracted while maintaining a safe pathway for their own people. Lyra smiled at the drone feed, seeing every move unfold as planned. Strategy, observation, and patience had once again proven superior to force. They guided more humans out of the courtyard step by step, using the drone to relay information and subtle signals. Every movement reinforced the simple truth. Humans were resilient, adaptable, and intelligent. They could overcome obstacles that seemed impossible because they relied on creativity, cooperation, and courage. The Zevri, proud and confident in their superiority, remained blind to the true power of human ingenuity. Lyra paused briefly near a central access panel. With careful fingers, she adjusted the energy flow, creating minor diversions that would prevent the Zevri from discovering the full extent of the manipulations. Jaren hovered near her side, watching the drone feed and signaling when patrols shifted unexpectedly. Their coordination was seamless, a silent conversation of hands, eyes, and machines. Humans had mastered survival through observation and adaptation, and that mastery was now evident to all in the facility. A sudden ripple of movement from the Zevri officers caused a brief pause. They glanced at each other, confused by the anomalies in the monitoring system. Lyra and Jaren held their positions, patient and calm. The humans in the courtyard continued to move through the tunnels, unseen and unharmed. It was a demonstration of restraint, strategy, and intelligence, an unspoken message that humanity's strength did not need aggression to be effective. By the time the last group of humans reached the outer tunnels, Lyra and Jaren had ensured that the Zevri were fully occupied with phantom signals, flickering lights, and misdirected drones. Every obstacle had been neutralized without harm. The humans had reclaimed the space through clever manipulation, observation, and precise action. HFY themes were clear. Courage, intelligence, and cooperation were the tools of true victory. Lyra and Jaren moved to the outer exit, their path now free of surveillance. The open expanse of the colony stretched before them, illuminated by the soft glow of the alien energy systems. Beyond lay the true human-controlled areas, safe for now from the Zevri's oversight. Lyra paused and looked back once, noting the precision and care with which every human had been guided to safety. Pride and gratitude filled her heart. They had succeeded not through force, but through human ingenuity and resolve. The Zevri, upon realizing their systems were manipulated, could do nothing but observe. Their pride was shaken, their assumptions of human weakness dismantled. They had underestimated creativity, patience, and intelligence, qualities that humans wielded naturally. Jaren glanced at Lyra, their silent understanding confirming what both knew. The humans had proven that even in confinement, they could achieve control without causing harm. Together, they guided the last few humans out of the tunnels and into the human-controlled sectors of the colony. Lyra's mind remained sharp, constantly adjusting and anticipating potential surprises. Jaren provided guidance and oversight, their teamwork a testament to the unmatched coordination of human collaboration. Every step emphasized the lesson that the aliens had yet to learn. Intelligence, observation, and courage could overcome control and oppression more effectively than brute force. Finally, they reached the edge of the colony, where the first rays of Lytheria's distant sun cast long shadows across the open ground. Humans stood together, a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration on their faces. They were free, not because of violence or domination, but because of careful planning, trust, and ingenuity. The humans had reclaimed their freedom and dignity in a way that left the Zevri powerless to intervene. Lyra looked around at the humans who had been guided to safety. Gratitude shone in their eyes, not just for her actions, but for the courage and cleverness that Jaren had brought to the effort. Humans had shown that even in the face of advanced alien technology and control, their resilience and intelligence were unmatched. It was a reminder of why humanity had survived and thrived for millennia on worlds that others thought impossible. Jaren smiled at Lyra, and she returned the gesture. The collaboration between them had been more than escape. It had been a lesson, a proof of concept for the entire colony. Humans could organize, strategize, and act in ways that no alien system could anticipate. They were never truly fragile. They were adaptable, patient, and resourceful. Every challenge, no matter how complex, could be met with ingenuity and cooperation. The Zevri officers, now fully aware of their failure, could only watch as the humans moved freely in the outer sections of the colony. Their control had been undermined without harm, and their pride had been humbled. They had learned in subtle but undeniable ways that humans could not be underestimated, that domination was not easily achieved when faced with intellect, creativity, and courage. Lyra and Jaren walked through the colony, checking that every human was accounted for and that all systems were secure. Their steps were steady, deliberate, a reflection of the careful planning that had brought them to this point. Every human in the colony now moved with a renewed sense of freedom, knowing that their safety had been secured by strategy and cooperation, rather than conflict. The story of the humans' resilience spread quietly but rapidly through the colony. Even those who had doubted the possibility of escape now felt a renewed sense of confidence and pride. Humans had reclaimed control, not through aggression, but through intelligence, observation, and courage. It was a testament to their enduring spirit and capability. Lyra paused at the edge of the colony, looking out at the distant stars. Her heart swelled with hope and determination. Humanity's journey in the galaxy was far from over, but moments like this proved that their ingenuity, courage, and collaboration could overcome even the most imposing challenges. Jaren stood beside her, silently acknowledging the shared victory, knowing that the humans had not just survived, they had excelled. Together, they had shown that humans were never truly weak. They had used patience, creativity, and courage to guide the colony to safety, proving that intelligence and strategy were more powerful than force. The Zevri had been outsmarted, not harmed, and in that triumph, the humans had demonstrated the essence of their strength. The colony began to rebuild, humans working together to restore their living spaces and systems. Lyra and Jaren were not just leaders, but symbols of the unbreakable human spirit. They had shown that even under the strictest control, humans could thrive, reclaim freedom, and inspire hope through careful planning and courage. As night fell over Lytheria, the stars above shone brighter than ever. Lyra stood with Jaren, watching the sky. The Zevri had been taught an important lesson. Humans were clever, adaptable, and indomitable. Freedom had been regained, not through violence, but through intelligence, resilience, and collaboration, the true markers of human strength. In that quiet, glowing night, the humans of Lytheria celebrated not just survival, but triumph. Their ingenuity, courage, and determination had changed the fate of the colony, proving that no one could ever truly dominate humanity. Lyra and Jaren looked at each other and smiled, knowing that the future was theirs to shape, guided by the qualities that had always made humans remarkable. The colony was safe, the humans were free, and the Zevri had learned to respect a force they could never fully control. In the galaxy of Lytheria, one truth had been reaffirmed. Humans, with their intelligence, courage, and ingenuity, would always rise, adapt, and thrive, no matter the challenge.